Don't pitch your novel into Fable 5 yet? Not because the model is bad. It actually might be the best writing model on the planet right now. But there are two things buried in the fine print that almost nobody is telling authors, and thousands of writers are going to run into both of them this week. One of them involves a copy of your manuscript that you didn't know you were making. The other one, you probably won't even notice when it happens. I'll explain both things and what I'd actually do about them. Fable 5 launched on June 9th, Anthropic's most capable model ever released to the public, completely digital raw dogging this powerful Mythos-level model. 3 days later, the US government ordered it offline, an export control directive citing national security. Anthropic got 90 minutes to comply, so they pulled the model down worldwide. Everyone gone. Then, for almost 3 weeks, the strongest writing model available to the public simply did not exist. Then, on July 1st, the government lifted that order, and Fable 5 was back. So right now, your feed is full of videos called Fable 5 is back, 5 must-use cases, 10 prompts you have to try. Fine, some of them are genuinely useful. I'm doing a lot of those kinds of things right now myself. But this is not one of those videos, because while everyone was making lists, almost nobody read the fine print. There are two things in it that matter more to authors than maybe any other use case. Here's the first one. Thing one, the 30-day copy. Every prompt you send to Fable 5 and every word it writes back is kept by Anthropic for 30 days. Every prompt. There is no opt-out. It applies on the website and the apps and through the API. Other Claude models have 0 retention options for certain users. Fable 5 does not. If it goes into Fable 5, a copy exists for 30 days. Now, before anyone reaches for their pitchforks, here's the honest version. Anthropic is not hiding this. It's disclosed. And the stated reason is safety, which makes sense. Fable 5 is the public version of a much more powerful model, and the retention exists so their safety systems can review how it's being used. They also state the data is not being used to train the model. I have no evidence otherwise, and I'm not going to invent any. That's the whole picture. But here's why it matters to you specifically as an author. In a way, it doesn't matter to someone asking for a dinner recipe. Your unpublished manuscript is the single most valuable file you own. If you paste your novel into Fable 5 for a revision pass, a copy of your novel now sits on someone else's servers for 30 days. Probably nothing happens to it. Probably. But you should be making that trade on purpose and not by accident. It gets sharper if you write for anyone else. Ghostwriters, book coaches editing client chapters, anyone under a non-disclosure agreement. If your contract says the client's material doesn't leave your hands, pasting it into a model with mandatory retention is a question for your contract, not for the model. That decision is not only yours to make. And memoir writers, this one's for you. Real names, real medical history, real family secrets. That's exactly the kind of content you want to think twice about before it sits on a 30-day holding pattern. If this sounds overly cautious, you might be right, but consider this. When Fable 5 launched, reporting said Microsoft's own legal team put employee use of it under review, specifically over this retention policy. When Microsoft's lawyers slow down and read the paperwork, you're allowed to do the same thing. So what do I actually do? For my own drafts that I've handwritten, work that I own outright, I'll use Fable 5 because I've decided the trade is worth it for me. For anyone covered by a contract, anything with someone else's secrets in it, I wouldn't do that. Informed is the entire point. Nobody's saying don't use it. I'm certainly not saying that. I'm saying know what you're agreeing to.
Don't do it by default, because this is genuinely unusual for Claude. This is at least something that you can see coming.
The second thing is a bit sneakier because when it happens, Fable 5 doesn't stop working. It just quietly stops being Fable 5. Everything I use to test these models on real fiction, the prompts, the blueprints, the tools I build on this channel lives in one place. That's my Ko-Fi shop. Links in the description. Back to the sneaky thing. Thing 2, the tripwire. Fable 5 is the public version of a restricted model called Mythos 5. Same brain. The difference is a set of safeguards. There's a classifier watching your conversation, and if it decides your request touches a high-risk area, things like cybersecurity, biology, chemistry, it doesn't refuse. It quietly falls back to an older model, Opus 4.8 or something else, and answers with that instead. Read that again. It doesn't say no, it downgrades. You asked Fable 5, something else answered. There's a notice, but if you're deep in a writing session, moving fast, it's very easy to miss. I missed it several times yesterday when I was coding. I'd be asking questions with Fable 5, and all of a sudden I'd look down at the model and see that it was actually Opus 4.8, and I would keep changing it back. Nothing I asked was problematic, at least not to me, but I think that the safeguards are very trigger happy right now. and they're going to probably overcompensate. Anthropic says about 95% of sessions never touch this. For most people writing most things, it's probably invisible. But think about who lives in the other 5%. Security researchers complain about this immediately because their day job kept tripping it. And you know who else's day job looks suspicious to a classifier? Writers. What about thriller writers? Think about what fiction research actually looks like. How would my character get into a hospital's network? What poison is hard to detect in an autopsy? How does someone disable a home security system? You know it's Chapter 12, the classifier doesn't. To a safety system, a crime novelist doing research and an actual bad actor can look identical, and the system is built to be cautious. Fable 5's actual advantage is long, complex work. Whole manuscript passes, deep revision. That's what it was built for and what it's really great at. Holding 300 pages in its head without losing the plot is incredible. That's what you should be spending it on. Scene research, the dark stuff, the Chapter 12 questions. Do that somewhere you've chosen deliberately in a regular model where you're not paying premium rates to maybe get downgraded anyway. If you're okay with the experiments and testing, well, of course, go right ahead. Save the expensive model for the expensive work.
So where does this land? Neither of these two things are a scandal. Both are disclosed on purpose and in documentation that Anthropic has published to the public. The problem is
documentation runs hundreds of pages, the people reading it are mostly programmers, and the coverage is written for programmers too. Nobody wrote the version for authors, so this was it. What really comes down to this question: should you use Fable 5? For the right jobs, yes, and I do. It is still probably the strongest model an author can touch right now for big structural whole book work. I'm using it for all sorts of things while I have it available. Just go in knowing a copy of what you paste exists for 30 days. Keep client work and NDA work out of it, and do your sketchy research somewhere else. One last practical note. Through July 7th, Fable 5 counts at half rate against the weekly usage limit on paid plans. After that, it moves to usage credits. Translation: this week is the cheap week. If you were ever going to run your manuscript through it, and it's a manuscript you own, this is the week to find out what it can do. Now, this model will still be available after this week. It's expensive, and even after you run out of your 50% usage, you can still purchase credits. We don't know exactly what it's going to look like moving forward, but odds are it's going to be token heavy and expensive. And not everybody can or even wants to do that, and I get that. I'm doing it because I'm getting the results I want. I'm reviewing my code bases, checking the security of my builds, improving systems, building new tools, and working on new exciting projects that I will release very soon. I'm automating the boring or hard things in my life around budgeting, video editing, and a lot more. Something tells me that this is the tip of the iceberg. AI will continue its explosive exponential growth, and I don't think we have any idea where we will be in a year, much less 3 or 5 years. Authors and writers who leverage these tools, not to replace creativity, but to multiply it, magnify it, and mobilize it, will be light years ahead of everyone else.